We were pretty sure that I did, but I had it early on and they didn't have enough testing. So I never got tested, but it sure took a month to get over it. And it was pretty horrible. Oh, I can hear you. Okay. Okay. So as you know, I work in the healthcare field. I do occupational therapy in a senior living center. And I don't know where I was exposed to COVID-19 at, or even if I actually officially had it, but my first symptoms were sore throat and a severe headache, and that lasted a couple of days. And then also extreme fatigue. And I must have had the fatigue for about a good 3 weeks. And after the sore throat went away, I developed, and the headache sort of went away. And then I developed this chest pain. It felt like a belt being squeezed around my chest and tightened. And then I started having the shortness of breath. And so I called in sick. Of course, I'm not going to go to work when I work with the seniors. My job is to protect them. So I stayed home. I went to the doctor, which was a kind of an eerie experience in itself. There were in the parking lot. Usually the parking lot is packed. You can't find a parking place, but there were hardly any cars there at all. And they had this big, huge sign out front. Now, mind you, this was early on, really, really early on, when we just had a few cases in North Carolina or in Wake Forest, maybe, I'm not sure. And they had this big sign out front saying, "Do not enter, call this phone number." So you actually had to stay in your car, check in from your car, and call and give them your credit card information, give them your insurance information, and then you describe what kind of car you have, what color, and where you're parked. And then they came out. She said, "Just wait, a nurse will come out shortly." So about 10 minutes later, a nurse came out, and she had a mask on. I mean, it was just really eerie. And of course, she stayed about 10 feet away from me, escorted me into the building. They hurry up and they quickly take your temperature, and then they hurry you into this room and they shut the door. And so as they see you, when you're finished, they hurry you out, and they have this hand sanitizer as you walk out the door, and off you go. And the whole thing maybe took 25 minutes, which was amazing. And the whole time I was in there, I saw maybe a couple of nurses and a doctor walking around. That was it. No patients to be found. They were all closed in behind their doors. So at first he thought that I didn't have COVID-19 because I never developed an actual temperature. But come to find out later, usually my temperature is about 96.2 instead of 98.6. So technically my temperature was 98.6. So that probably was a temperature for me. But anyway, so they even did an EKG because I was having the chest pains, and they were thinking that it was heart related. They just didn't really know at this point. I don't believe he had any tests, or not many. So he didn't want to test me. So he sends me home and tells me I can go back to work because he thought it was heart related, or maybe I had inflammation of my heart wall, which sounds really scary, but he didn't really offer me too much information about that. And so I go home. I go to work the next day, but I was very mindful. I had mask on. I was washing my hands. I was hand sanitizing everything. I was trying to stay 6 feet away from my patients. So nobody there got it, thank goodness. But by the time I got home, my eyes were bloodshot. I was sick. The next day I had to call into work. And from that point on, I must have missed 4 or 5 weeks of work. And it got so bad. It seems to haunt you at night. So when you're laying flat, that tightening around the chest, and it was very difficult to breathe. And so at times I tried not to panic, and I just kept praying and having faith that I would be fine. I just had to know and had to believe that I would be fine. I'm young, I'm healthy, and my job, my only job, is to really have faith and protect my patients. So there was no way I was going back. Whether I had, well, actually, I had saved up some vacation time. I was supposed to go to Cancun. So I ended up
I remember
trading.
you telling us about that.
Yeah, so I ended up trading my vacation time to stay home with possible COVID-19.
What a
Not
great.
my idea of a fun vacation. However, they ended up closing the border anyway. So, although I'm still waiting for my my money back from this trip, but anyway, so at one point the breathing became so difficult that I actually called him and I was panicked. And when I called the doctor hotline, they were telling me to go to the emergency room, but I really did not want to go to the emergency room because I thought if I don't have COVID-19, I will by the time I leave there, you know? So I really, really did not want to go. So I waited till my doctor's office opened. I called him and he said, you know, try not to go to the emergency room. But he said, if you get worse, call me and we'll figure it out. So I said, okay. So I just tried not to panic and I just kept praying and kept breathing and just, even my albuterol inhaler, because I do have asthma, it would not touch it. I normally take supplements. And whenever I'm getting sick, I usually take wellness formula, and it has all kinds of goodies in it, vitamin C and all kinds of stuff. It would not touch it, and it usually knocks it right out. That fatigue was so intense that I was lying on the couch. I don't think the entire month that I turned my TV on more than 2 times the entire month. I pretty much just stared at the ceiling. I kept thinking, this is a great opportunity to write, but there was just no way. So pretty much I just stayed on my couch and stared at the ceiling, and my cat laid on top of me. And that was my experience. And then finally it started to get better, and I was supposed to go back to work. He only gave me a 2 weeks, like a 2-week doctor note. And so as I was getting ready to go back to work, I still had some symptoms. I still had the chest tightening. I still had the shortness of breath. And then my temperature spiked to 99, which again is probably high for me.
It's high for you.
Yeah, so I called my boss, and also my doctor gave me an extension on my 2 weeks. He said, just stay out another 2 weeks. Like I said, I did not want to expose anybody to this, because if one of my patients got sick and ended up dying from this, I would never forgive myself. So I opted just not to get paid for a month. I've yet to be able to get through unemployment to file for it. And I'm just taking it as a loss unless something miraculous happens and I actually get paid for my time off somewhat. But whatever. That's not even the point. The point is I need to protect my patients. So anyway, last week on Thursday, I re-entered the workforce, and I'm completely healthy now. And we were already in the early phases of COVID-19. When I left work, I had just gotten informed that our facility had begun a lockdown. And I have to say that, first of all, I want to shout out to all the medical workers, all the frontline workers, all the essential workers, and not even just the nurses and the doctors, but everybody in the medical field. And gosh, even the people, especially the people at the grocery stores, they're amazing. I mean, they're risking themselves every day just so we can eat. So thank you to everybody. But so I go back to work, not fully understanding what I was going to walk into. We're on lockdown. They have all the doors in the whole entire place closed, locked. And so if you leave, you can't get back in. And you have to go to the front door, and they have all these signs posted all over the door. Do not enter, knock on the door, and if nobody answers, call this number. So I knocked, and they came and they let me in. And before I could even step one foot into that place, they were taking my temperature, and they had this whole check-off questionnaire. And then you have to sign in, I guess, so they can track it back. If COVID would ever get into the facility, they would be able to know where it came from and where you've been. and we have to sign in. And then I work in therapy, so I work at in an office at the end of the place, and we have a whole nother. So it's another company that actually works in this facility. So we have a whole nother checklist and temperature check off and everything that we have to do. I mean, I'm just absolutely amazed at how awesome they are and how proactive, because way back 6 weeks ago, when we first heard that there was the first case here, the maintenance supervisor, all the staff, they were walking around and they were just absolutely disinfecting everything. And then within a week of that, we were locked down, and I don't know, they might have let some visitors in, but now we're on a full lockdown where only essential workers can come in. And I believe you have to be pre-approved to even enter the place. So, so I was lucky because God provided an angel to give me an N95 mask. And I really appreciate it, because at the time, despite what we were being told, we did not have enough PPE for everybody. Now, as of today, we had this big shipment and we do have surgical masks. But I felt extra protected because I do have this nice mask, and I do go into patients' rooms. I do have direct patient contact with them, and everybody in our company at least has a surgical mask. But the interesting thing that I didn't know is, if you get a mask, at first you had to keep that mask for a whole entire week or indefinitely, and you had to try to keep it as clean as possible. And you had to, when we have to keep our mask on the entire time we're in the facility, except for when we eat lunch. We have to eat lunch in a non-patient area. We have to clean up where we eat, and then we have to remove our mask, put it in a paper bag, because the paper bag is breathable, which that was just something interesting that I didn't know. And then we eat our lunch, we clean off our area again, and we put our mask back on, we wash our hands, and then off we go. And the interesting thing is, these are things that you don't even think about unless you're wearing a mask. If you have to keep it on the entire time, you get very thirsty after a whole day, and you cannot drink. So, and I'm going to get really real with you. If your nose is running just a little bit, there's not a thing you can do about it. You just have to suck it up, and nobody can notice it anyway. But, and,
do they have a Copenhagen user version of this? Do they?
I don't think so. And I'm going to get even more real. You have to be careful what you eat for lunch, because you have to sit there and smell it all day long because, anyway, that was just a little too real. But, okay, so the masks are really, really tight. And by the end of the day, by the time you take it off and you're completely dehydrated and you want to just guzzle water the second you get in your car, you take your mask off, you do your hand sanitizer again, and you look in the mirror and your face is kind of swollen because it's so tight. You look like a chipmunk a little bit when you're wearing it. And you have all these lines just embedded in your face, and your face is all red and it almost looks bruised. I almost took a picture of it to give to you to post tonight, and I thought, nah. But thankfully, I think most of the lines have gone away. So anyway, it would have been perfect for tonight's program.
Okay.
But these are the things you just don't even realize unless you're actually having to wear the mask. But also, I'm very, very grateful that I have it.
Well, Lori, you're a champ, and I'm sorry to hear what you went through, but so many,
Thank you.
Some that go through that don't come out the other side, and that's always, we'd kind of miss you. And so you couldn't. The sad thing is, like you mentioned, here you have all this time that you can't go to work. It'd be nice to redeem that time in some way, like writing. But you say you just felt too bad. You just couldn't.
Yeah.
You couldn't. That's too bad.
I didn't even say this. Toward the end, when I started actually feeling better, the last week of when you have it, it comes and goes. One day you think you're feeling great, and then the next day you're feeling horrible, and then it kind of comes back, and then you start to feel good again, and you think, oh, I've got this beat, I'm on this, and then boom, it comes back again, and it's kind of a yo-yo. But I made a post on this. I don't know for those who have seen it, but I actually just walked down to my mailbox. My mailbox is not that far down my driveway. And I walked down to my mailbox, got my mail, and had to stop 3 times because there's a slight hill coming back up. And by the time I got back up in here, I was so exhausted, I had to take a 2-hour nap just from going to my mailbox. And I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to go to work in a week and a half? I mean, that's all I do all day long is walk. It's a big place. And so after I got over the yo-yo and I actually started consistently feeling better, I started walking, and I would just walk a quarter of a mile or even less. I would walk to the mailbox and back. And then when I could do that without feeling exhausted, and it's a good thing because I'm in therapy and I know how to do this, to rehab myself. But then I started walking a quarter of a mile. Then I started walking a half a mile. And then I started walking 2 miles. And then I called one of my friends and said, I need to rehab myself. And she's in physical therapy. And so we started hiking because I wanted some uneven surfaces, and I wanted some hills, and I wanted a little bit more of a challenge, but not too much. So we started walking 2 miles and 2.5 miles, and then 3 miles, 3.5 miles. And then by the time that I went back to work, I was walking 5 miles. I did that one time, but I was so proud of myself. And, sometimes I couldn't walk the next day. I would have to cancel, and she'd say, oh, come on, Lori, at least just go walk a quarter of a mile. Maybe when you get out there, you'll feel better. And so some days I couldn't do that. I couldn't do it at all. And other days I got out there and I did feel better, and then I was able to walk the 2.5 miles. So it was quite a rehab process to get back. But I tell you, after the first day of being back at work, I felt like I walked that 5-mile walk just from working 6 hours. So I'm still building myself back up, but I'm on the road to recovery, and I'm one of the lucky ones, thank goodness. And I pray for all the people who have had it worse and that are in the hospital, and for the people who aren't making it. And it's really sad to me, and it makes me really look at my patients. And our job working where I work is to protect these patients first and foremost, and then secondary to that, our job is to keep them calm and make them feel secure and let them know that we've got them and we're protecting them in every way that we can. And I know that it's an inconvenience because some of the adjustments they have to make is that they're sort of quarantined into the room. I mean, they can leave and go down and get their mail and come back, but they're not supposed to linger in the halls. They've closed the dining room off, and they closed the dining room off, and they, I'm sorry. Am I still on here?
I know what's happening.
Should I keep talking?
Yeah. Well, actually, we're running out of time. Look, the chat room is abuzz with one question.
Okay.
And that is, have you in this? Did you lose your sense of taste and that? Everybody wants to know.
I did not. But I lost my appetite. I was hungry. I was actually starving, but nothing sounded good, and I didn't eat. And I actually lost weight until I started feeling better, and then I gained it back, unfortunately.
Well, there you have it, folks. Lori, we're just glad to have you. And when you've been staring at the ceiling, for weeks at end, and you take a quarter-mile walk, I can only imagine the scenery must be just a little sweeter.
Yeah, I could tell you that hike was just breathtaking, and I videotaped it. I'm going to share it at some point, but it was just like seeing a whole new world. So please, everybody, please social distance. Just because you can fight it off doesn't mean that the older generation can.
Well, we're glad. Well, thanks for sharing. I mean, we are hearing so much, and so much. You don't know what to believe. but it's good to
Yes.
hear it from you, because we believe you, Lori, and we're just glad that that you're okay, and we're glad that you're out there taking care of the more vulnerable.
Thank you.
And you're a sweetheart and a champion, and we appreciate you sharing. But folks, we have in just a few moments. Lori, do you have a parting word before I start boring people with my monologue?
Well, if you do get it, just keep praying and have hope, and it's really all in God's hands anyway. So
We're good.
there's nothing we can do about this whole thing. We can just ride along with it and try to stay in our happy place
Make
and
the
be
best of it.
positive.
Lori, you're a champ. Appreciate you sharing tonight, really.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Lori Hayes here on pjnet.tv. There it is, the real deal, the raw deal, the unedited, the unscripted, and the live. Thank you for putting up. I was a little, I was getting all these texts, and some of them were from you saying my microphone was not working. It looked like it was working from here, but thanks for the heads up. I was able to get that corrected, I believe. Meanwhile, are you in one of those group text thingies, and somebody sends a text and everybody starts replying, and so my phone's going ding, 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 so that's the way that is. Folks, in just a few moments, Ashley Jones will be joining us, and that'll be at the bottom of the hour. And she is going to be filling in for Michelle Medlock Adams, as she has done before, and she's done a great job of it. And don't touch that dial. Before I leave, I want to ask 2 questions. The first question is, what is the boldest thing you have ever done for Jesus Christ? Got that? Second question is then, well, when the heck was that? My goal is to never be satisfied with either end.